AMC's long-running zombie epic The Walking Dead has given us unforgettable survivors, heartbreaking losses, and shocking twists across 11 seasons and multiple spin-offs. But through it all, there has only ever been one Rick Grimes. From waking up in a deserted hospital to leading armies against impossible odds, Rick has defined The Walking Dead at every step. He's not just a survivor, he's the heartbeat of the apocalypse. And now, with the ones who live, reminding us that Rick always brings the biggest, boldest, and bloodiest moments. It's time to look back. Today, we're ranking Rick Grimes' most iconic, jaw-dropping moments in the entire franchise. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Let's kick things off with one of the very first moments that showed us who Rick Grimes really was. After the now legendary pilot episode Days Gone By, where Rick wakes up alone in the hospital and stumbles into the nightmare of the apocalypse, he could have easily stayed in the role of a lost wanderer. Confused, desperate, just trying to figure things out. But by episode 2, Guts, Rick takes his first real step into becoming the leader we'd all come to know. Stranded in Atlanta, surrounded by an ocean of walkers, Rick is forced to think fast. He teams up with Glenn and T-Dog, while a hot-headed Merle Dixon causes more chaos than help. And it's here that Rick makes one of the most memorable survival calls in the history of the series. If the walkers can't tell the living from the dead, then maybe the living should smell just as rotten. What follows is one of the most stomach-turning, iconic sequences in The Walking Dead. Rick and Glenn hacking apart a corpse, smearing themselves in guts, and walking right into the middle of the horde. It's disgusting, it's terrifying, and it works. That single moment told us everything about Rick Grimes. That he could adapt, that he could outthink his enemies, and that he was willing to cross any line, no matter how grim, if it meant survival. Rick wasn't just wandering anymore. This was the first time we saw him start to lead. And from here on out, he wasn't just reacting to the apocalypse. He was mastering it. If you ask most fans when The Walking Dead really shifted gears from just a survival drama into a show about brutal, impossible choices, a lot of people will point to Season 2. After Sophia's heartbreaking reveal in Pretty Much Dead Already, when Rick is the one forced to put her down after weeks of searching, the group is shattered. Trust is broken, grief is everywhere, and Rick himself is starting to feel the weight of being the one who has to make the calls no one else can. That's where Nebraska comes in. Rick goes looking for Herschel, who's drowning his guilt at a small-town bar. But instead of finding a quiet moment, he runs headfirst into two strangers, Dave and Tony. At first, it feels like a normal bar conversation. Nervous laughter, casual questions, a few drinks. But as their smiles fade and their tone shifts, we start to realize these guys aren't just making small talk. They want in. They want to know where Rick's group is, and they're not taking no for an answer. The tension is unbearable. Herschel freezes. Glenn looks terrified. And then, in the blink of an eye, Rick draws, fires, and puts both men down without hesitation. That was the moment the show told us. Rick Grimes is not just a sheriff anymore. He's not even just a survivor. He's becoming someone who will cross any line, spill any blood, if it means protecting his people. It's not flashy. There's no big horde, no massive battle. But it's chilling. Because in that quiet little bar in Nebraska, Rick Grimes took his first real step into the darkness that would define the rest of his journey. From the very first season, we all knew it was coming. Rick and Shane, brothers in arms, partners in law enforcement, practically family. But when the world ended, so did that bond. And by the time we reach Better Angels, the tension between them has grown into something deadly. Shane wasn't just jealous of Rick stepping back into Lori and Carl's lives. He wasn't just power-hungry. He was unstable, violent, and willing to put the entire group at risk to get what he wanted. And in this episode, it all comes to a boiling point. Shane lures Rick out into the woods under the guise of searching for Randall. But his real plan? To kill Rick, blame it on the escaped prisoner, and step into his role as leader, and even as Lori's partner. It's one of the most nerve-wracking standoffs in the series. Shane pulls his gun. Rick refuses to even draw his weapon. No flinching, no scrambling, just standing there, staring down his oldest friend and saying in so many words, "If you're going to do it, do it. But I won't play your game." And that's what throws Shane off balance. That moment of hesitation is all Rick needs. He steps forward and drives the knife into Shane's chest. The look on his face says it all. This isn't a victory, it's heartbreak, it's betrayal. It's the end of the only person who ever truly knew him before the world fell apart. But it also marks a huge shift in who Rick Grimes is becoming. He'll do what has to be done, even if it means putting down his own brother. And while fans saw it as justice long overdue, Rick himself saw it as the day he lost a piece of his soul. That scene in the moonlit field didn't just kill Shane, it killed the last part of Rick that thought he could ever go back to being a normal man. By the time we reach the end of season 4, Rick Grimes is no longer just the sheriff, no longer just the leader. He's a man who's lost almost everything: Shane, Lori, Herschel, and he's carrying the crushing weight of keeping Carl alive in a world that keeps demanding more and more from him. This episode, A, is brilliant because it forces Rick to confront both sides of himself. In flashbacks, we see Herschel urging him to hold on to his humanity, to be more than just a ruthless survivor. But in the present, Rick is tested in the most brutal way imaginable. Captured by the Claimers, Rick, Daryl, Michonne, and Carl are outnumbered, bound, and moments away from something unthinkable. Joe, the leader of the Claimers, makes his intentions crystal clear. They're going to kill Rick, torture Daryl, and assault Carl, and that's when Rick snaps. With nothing left to lose, he lunges forward and does the unthinkable, tearing Joe's throat out with his teeth. It's primal, it's shocking, and it's one of the most animalistic moments ever seen on the show. That single act saves his family, but it also shows just how far Rick is willing to go. He's no longer the sheriff from Kentucky. He's not just a father trying to keep things together. He's become something new, a predator, perfectly adapted to the nightmare world around him. And the moment doesn't stop there. After they're captured again, this time by the residents of Terminus, Rick delivers one of the coldest, most iconic lines in Walking Dead history. Surrounded, trapped, and yet unshaken, he growls, "They're screwing with the wrong people." It's the ultimate transformation. The moment Rick Grimes fully sheds his old skin and embraces the brutal survivor he was always meant to be. After years of running, fighting, and barely surviving, Rick and his group finally stumble upon something that feels impossible: safety. When they arrive at the Alexandria safe zone in Season 5's Remember, it looks like a dream. Clean houses, running water, electricity. A community that seems untouched by the horrors outside its walls. But dreams come with suspicion. Rick and the group refuse to give up their weapons at first, and when they finally do, it's with the kind of hesitation that says, "We've seen too much to trust this." And rightfully so. Because the residents of Alexandria? They're soft. Unprepared? This is where we start to see a fascinating new side of Rick. Outwardly, he's smiling, trimming his beard, cleaning up into the role of a lawman again. Appointed as constable alongside Michonne, he looks almost like the man he used to be. But underneath, there's something dangerous brewing. He's already plotting, already thinking, if Alexandria can't handle the apocalypse, we'll take it from them. And yet, even in this cold, calculating mode, Rick is still at his best as a father. His bond with Carl is stronger than ever here, especially when Carl confides in him about his fears, and the two team up to clear walkers in the woods. It's a reminder that for all the darkness Rick carries, family is still the thing grounding him. Deanna Monroe, the leader of Alexandria, even points out what we already know. Rick isn't just settling in, he's protecting this place before it's even his. He's already the heartbeat of Alexandria, whether its people realize it or not. Constable Rick is one of the most unsettling transformations in his journey. On the surface, he's calm, clean-shaven, and back in uniform. But behind that badge, he's more dangerous, more calculating, and more willing to take control than ever before. By the time we hit Try in Season 5, Rick Grimes is straddling a dangerous line. On one hand, he's fighting for justice. On the other, he's starting to look just as unhinged as some of the monsters he's fought against. The flashpoint comes with Jessie and her husband, Pete. Rick knows Pete is abusive, dangerous, and a threat to Jessie and her children. He does the right thing. He goes to Deanna, Alexandria's leader, and pleads the case. But Deanna shuts him down. Pete's a surgeon, and in Alexandria, his value as a doctor outweighs his sins as a man. For Rick, that's unacceptable. He takes matters into his own hands, confronting Jessie and offering her a way out. But before anything can be resolved, Pete storms home, and suddenly fists are flying. What starts as a private confrontation explodes into a full-on brawl that bursts onto the streets of Alexandria. And Rick? He wins. But victory doesn't look like control here. He's bloody, wild-eyed, and armed. Surrounded by the townspeople, he launches into a tirade about how weak Alexandria is, how unprepared they are, and how he's the one who knows what it takes to survive. His voice rises, his gestures get more frantic, and suddenly Rick looks less like a leader and more like a man unraveling. That's when Michonne steps in. Calm, collected, and unimpressed, she walks right up to him and knocks him out cold with a single punch. It's one of the most powerful Rick moments because it reminds us that he's not untouchable. Rick can lose himself. Rick can go too far. And when he does, Michonne, the one person he trusts implicitly, is the only one who can pull him back, even if it means literally knocking some sense into him. In that moment, we see the beginnings of one of The Walking Dead's strongest bonds. Rick and Michonne aren't just allies, they're each other's balance. I know, and this punch was the first real proof of it. No Way Out is one of those rare Walking Dead episodes where everything happens at once. Chaos layered on chaos until the whole screen feels like it might explode. It kicks off with Daryl casually taking out an entire gang of Negan's saviors with a rocket launcher, and from there, things only spiral further out of control. In Alexandria, Rick's world collapses in seconds. Jesse and her sons are overwhelmed by walkers, and in the chaos, Sam's panic indirectly leads to Carl being shot. His eye blown out in one of the series' most shocking injuries. Rick rushes Carl to the infirmary, covered in blood, watching his son's life slip away. And for once, there's nothing he can do but wait. But waiting isn't in Rick's nature. Standing over his unconscious son, he realizes he can't save Carl in this moment. But he can fight, and fight he does. Rick bursts back into the streets of Alexandria and unleashes pure fury on the horde outside. No hesitation, no plan, just one man with a machete hacking through walker after walker like a machine. It's bloody, it's desperate, and it's cathartic, because in Rick's rage, we see both his grief and his refusal to give up. And the beauty of this scene? His defiance inspires everyone else. Michonne, Glenn, Maggie, even the softer residents of Alexandria, who had never truly fought for themselves before. They all join him in the streets, cutting through wave after wave of walkers until, impossibly, the town is free. By the end of the battle, Rick hasn't just slaughtered the horde, he's united Alexandria. He's turned fear into strength, tragedy into resolve. No Way Out isn't just about Rick Grimes tearing through walkers, it's about Rick proving, once again, that his willpower alone can turn survival into victory. By the time we reach the Season 8 finale, Rick Grimes has been pushed through the fire like never before. The wars with the Saviors weren't just battles, they were personal. He watched Glenn and Abraham beaten to death in front of him. He bent the knee to Negan. He lost close allies, his community fractured, and worst of all, he lost Carl, the son he had sacrificed everything to protect. To a walker bite? So when Wrath delivers the long-awaited showdown between Rick and Negan, it feels like the entire weight of 2 seasons comes crashing down. The armies clash, the saviors crumble, and at last, Rick and Negan are face-to-face in their final fight. Rick is bloodied, desperate, and outmatched. Negan taunts him, promising that he'll kill everyone Rick cares about. But then Rick does what only Rick Grimes would do. He doesn't win with brute strength, but with a moment of connection. He invokes Carl. He speaks of mercy, of building a future, of something better than endless bloodshed. And in Negan's hesitation, Rick strikes, slashing his throat open. The crowd roars. The war is over. Negan is finally beaten. And then, the twist. Instead of finishing him, instead of taking revenge for Glenn, Abraham, or even Carl, Rick orders him saved. He demands that Negan live, imprisoned as a symbol that the world can be rebuilt differently. It's mercy, but it's also cruelty. Because for Negan, living as a captive, powerless, forced to watch the communities he tried to destroy flourish without him, that's a punishment worse than death. This was one of Rick's most controversial moments. Fans debated for years whether he made the right call, but in truth, this wasn't about Negan. It was about Carl, about honoring his son's vision of a world where mercy, even in the darkest times, could still win. Rick Grimes' farewell and what comes after isn't just one of the best episodes of The Walking Dead. It's one of the most emotional farewells in TV history. From the very beginning, the imagery takes us full circle. Rick, gravely wounded with a rebar spike through his side, drags himself back onto a horse. It's a haunting mirror of the pilot episode, Days Gone By, where a clean, determined Rick rode into Atlanta on horseback. But this time, it's not arrogance or duty driving him forward. It's desperation. It's sacrifice. Rick is literally holding himself together just long enough to lead a massive horde away from the people he loves. And as his body weakens, his mind begins to slip. What follows is a journey not just through the apocalypse, but through Rick's very soul. He hallucinates Shane, Herschel, Sasha, echoes of the people he's lost, each one forcing him to confront who he's become and what he's still fighting for. These visions aren't just fan service. They're the emotional spine of the episode. They remind us how much Rick has carried, how much he's lost, and why he refuses to stop, even now. Bleeding out, barely clinging to life, Rick reaches the bridge, his last chance to stop the horde from reaching his people. And in one final act of defiance, he blows it sky high, sacrificing himself in an explosion that takes out the walkers. And seemingly himself. The twist, of course, is that Rick survives. Whisked away by Jadis and the CRM, his story isn't over. But in that moment, the blast, the smoke, the reactions of Daryl, Michonne, and Maggie, it feels like the end. It feels like the final ride of a man who gave everything to protect his family. What comes after is stunning, because it captures the entire arc of Rick Grimes in one episode. From the sheriff on horseback, to the leader, to the broken survivor who still refuses to quit. It wasn't a permanent goodbye, but it was one of the most heroic, heartbreaking exits the show ever gave us.